Good day, everyone. So today we will be reporting about the Prophet by Kahlil Gibran, and my group mates are Singcol Reyza Mae, Suerte Sigrid, Tabal April May, Tabal Robelyn, Taboada Zyx, and me, Tundag Jade Marie. Kahlil Gibran's masterpiece is The Prophet, and it is one of the most beloved classics of our time. It is published in 1923 and it has been translated into more than 100 languages. And the American editions alone have sold more than 9 million copies. So, The Prophet is a collection of poetic essays that are philosophical, spiritual, and above all, inspirational. Gibran's musings are divided into 28 chapters, covering such sprawling topics as love, marriage, children, giving, eating, and drinking, work, joy and sorrow, housing, clothes, buying and selling, crime and punishment, loss, freedom, reason and passion, pain, self-knowledge, teaching, friendship, talking, time, good and evil, prayer, pleasure, beauty, religion, and lastly, death. Of an ambitious first printing of 2000 in 1923, Knopf sold 1,159 copies. The demand for the Prophet doubled the following year, and doubled again the year after that. It was translated into French by Madeleine Masson Manhem in 1926. By the time of Gibran's death in 1931, it had also been translated into German. Annual sales reached 1,000 in 1935, 111,000 in 1961, and 240,000 in 1965. So the book sold its 1 millionth copy in 1957. At one point, The Prophet sold more than 5,000 copies a week worldwide. Though born a Maronite, Gibran was influenced not only by his own religion but also by the Baha'i faith, which is Islam, and the mysticism of the Sufis. His knowledge of Lebanon's bloody history with its destructive factional struggles strengthened his belief in the fundamental unity of religions, something which his parents exemplified by welcoming people of various religions in their home. Connections and parallels have also been made to William Blake's work, as well as the theological ideas of Walt Whitman and Ralph Waldo Emerson, such as reincarnation and the oversoul. Themes of influence in his work were Arabic art, European classicism, particularly Leonardo da Vinci, and Romanticism, Blake and Auguste Rodin, the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and more modern symbolism and surrealism. So, Gibran's strong connections to the Baha'i faith started around 1912. One of Gibran's acquaintances, Juliet Thompson, reported several anecdotes relating to Gibran. She recalled Gibran had met Abdul Baha, the leader of the religion, at the time of Abdul Baha's journey to the West. Gibran was unable to sleep the night before meeting him in person to draw his portrait. In April 1912, on the island of Manhattan, Gibran later told Thompson that in Abdul Baha he had seen the unseen and been filled. So Gibran began work on the Prophet in 1912, when he got the first motif for his island god, whose Promethean exile shall be an island one, rather than a mountain one. In 1928, after the death of Abdul Baha, at a viewing of a movie of Abdul Baha, Gibran rose to talk and proclaim in tears an exalted station of Abdul Baha and left the event weeping still.
Hello everyone, this is April May Tabal and I'm going to talk about the author of the story The Prophet, which is Kahlil Gibran. So Kahlil Gibran was a Lebanese American writer. He is a poet and a visual artist. He was born on January 6, 1883 in Bishari, Lebanon, which at that time was a part of Syria and a part of the Ottoman Empire. He was the youngest son of Kahlil Said Hubran, a tax collector eventually imprisoned for embezzlement, and Camilla Hubran, whose father was a clergyman in the Maronite Christian Church. In 1885, Gibran migrated with his mother and siblings to the United States, where they settled in the large Syrian and Lebanese community in Boston. It was there that Gibran learned English and enrolled in art classes. In 1918, Gibran's book of poems and parables entitled The Madman was published, and in 1923, he published one of his most famous work, which is The Prophet. So The Prophet has been translated in more than 100 languages and described as one of the best-selling books of all time and highly recommended book. The biblically inspired The Prophet was especially popular in the 1960s. The Prophet has now sold more than 10 million copies, making Gibran one of the best-selling poets in the world. 3 years later, Gibran published The Sand and Foam. Gibran was active in a New York-based Arab-American literary group called the Pen League. It is a subset of the Muhar movement whose members promoted writing in Arabic and English. Throughout his life, he would publish 9 books in Arabic and 8 in English, which revolve around on love, longing, death, and explore religious themes. He died of cirrhosis of the liver on April 10, 1931, in New York City.
Good day, everyone. My name is Sigrid Suerte, and I'll be the one to talk about Summary of the Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. Kahlil Gibran's novel The Prophet is a story of the central character's life and death as a beloved prophet. Gibran begins the novel with Al-Mustafa, who spends his early years in Orphalese. He represents the light to the people he guides. Although he is appreciated for his wisdom, he is also criticized for his aloofness. He is presented at the beginning of the novel as bittersweet about leaving home. Gibran moves the novel forward by inserting philosophical questions into the narrative for which Al-Mustafa must answer. The questions are asked by Al-Mitra, a seer who believes in Al-Mustafa. Al-Mustafa answers questions about life, particularly about the link between birth and death. Al-Mustafa tailors his responses based upon the type of listener. If a listener is sincere, Al-Mustafa will use a more humble response. However, if the listener is cynical, his perspective filled with mockery, Al-Mustafa will use a response that is more indicative of the character of the individual. Using references to nature and the need to balance everyday life issues. By the end of The Prophet, Al-Mustafa leaves, not before delivering a final, tearful farewell. The Prophet is a fable about the Prophet Al-Mustafa, who has lived in city of Orphalese for over 12 years, and when finally leaving for his home country, people of Orphalese gathers to bid him farewell, and ask for his guidance on important aspects of life. The book is divided in 26 short chapters that are Prophet's responses to questions posed to him at farewell. These questions ranging from love, work, joy, and sorrows, prayers, pleasure, to name a few. The first chapter of the book was about the coming of the ship. Al-Mustafa the Prophet has lived in the city of Orphalese for 12 years. On the 7th day of Lilul, the month of reaping, the ship he has been awaiting arrives to take him back to the isle of his birth. Al-Mustafa's joy is diminished by sorrow. He will leave behind meaningful things, including fragments of his spirit that he has scattered in the streets of Orphalese. The people hear that Al-Mustafa is leaving and begin to gather. The Prophet wonders what last wisdom he can share with them. Elders, priests, priestesses, and others beg Al-Mustafa to stay. Then the seer Al-Mitra, his earliest follower, comes out of the temple. Knowing the prophet must leave, she asked him to speak to us and give us your truth. In reply, Al Mustafa asked what he can speak of, save that which is even now moving within their souls. The next chapter would be about on love. The path of love is worth following. Though sometimes it is hard and painful, love strips away protective emotional armor and leaves someone naked, ready to be reshaped into a more sacred being. It reveals a person's secret heart. Love gives only of itself and takes only from itself. It cannot be possessed or controlled. When someone loves, they must not hold back. They must allow the experience of love, with all its joy and pain, to envelop them. Thus, they will learn the true meaning of ecstasy, gratitude, and contentment. The third chapter of the book would be about on marriage. Marriage is an eternal joining of souls in love, but there must be spaces in the togetherness, which is the room for the two souls to breathe. In marriage, love is not bondage. It is togetherness shared, hearts freely given, but not possessed. It is standing side by side like the supporting pillars of its temple. The oak tree and the cypress. In the book, the speaker says, cannot grow in each other's shadow. The fourth chapter of the book is about on children. Parents do not possess their children, but are their loving caretakers. Do not try to make them think and behave as a parent would, for they are their own persons. They are the sons and daughters of life and belong to tomorrow. Life always moves forward towards the future. They say children are like living arrows, and parents are the bow. God is the archer who bends the bow and sends the arrows into the future, along the path of the infinite. For the archer, the bow that is stable is as loved as the arrow that flies. The sixth chapter will be on giving. The rich man asked the prophet to speak of giving. A person truly gives, Al Mustafa says, when they give of the self, not possessions. Possessions are temporary things, a useless safeguard against the fear of need. A gift given for recognition or hidden desire is unwholesome. Giving without thought of getting in return is a godly act. Give freely, Al Mustafa counsels, without being asked, and while the choice belongs to a living person, not their heirs. Do not demand the recipients first prove themselves worthy of the giving. In truth, life is both the giver and the receiver. The giver is merely an instrument of giving, while the receiver must share the giver's joy rather than feel the weight of indebtedness, for such weight puts the giver's generosity in doubt. The seventh chapter talks about on eating and drinking. Here, Al Mustafa responds to the innkeeper who asked about eating and drinking. He said, to eat and to drink are necessary, but they are violent acts against living things. Therefore, they must be acts of worship. When killing a beast for food, people must remember that animals and human beings are governed by the same natural laws. A person, too, will give up their life one day. When eating an apple, remember that it is becoming part of the person eating it and sustaining their life. When gathering grapes for the wine press, remember that each life one day will be stored like wine in eternal vessels, and each cup drawn will be a song, a memory of life. Chapter 8 talks about on work. Responding to the plowman's request, Al Mustafa tells his audience that work is a natural part of life and keeps the worker in rhythm with time and the seasons. Neither a curse nor a misfortune, work is an ennobling endeavor that fulfills life. When performed with love, work creates a spiritual bond, joining yourself and to one another and then to God. To work in love is to work as if the beloved were the intended recipient of what labor produces. All work is noble when it is performed with love. Work without love generates an indifferent, inferior end product and is best not engaged in at all. The ninth chapter talks about on houses. A mason asked the prophet to speak of houses. Though a house is built within city walls, Al-Mustafa responds, do not lose spiritual connection with forests and meadows or with green paths and vineyards. In spirit, people are wanderers. In fear, people have built their houses too close together, separating hearts from fields. Al-Mustafa asked the people of Orphalese whether behind the safety of locked doors they have peace, remembrances, and beauty, or only comfort. When the lust for comfort is the master, physical desires are its puppets. The passion of the soul dies. For those who are children of space, whose souls are not bound by walls, the world is their home, the sky a mansion, and the morning mists its door. Its windows are the songs and silences of night. The 10th chapter is all about on clothes. Clothes may cover and protect the body from cold and may offer a sense of privacy and modesty. But clothes also hide natural beauty and separate the skin from the touch of sun and wind. Clothes shield the body from the eyes of the unclean. But when there are no unclean, clothes suggest uncleanliness to the mind. The natural self is part of the natural world. Chapter 11 is about on buying and selling. Responding to the merchant who asked about buying and selling, Al-Mustafa says that earth provides all the food necessary. No greed or hunger exist when the gifts of the earth are exchanged in love. The Prophet then exhorts his audience to behave in a godly manner. In the marketplace, he says, let godliness, the master spirit of the earth, guide the exchange of goods among the farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen. Invite those who come to the marketplace empty-handed to work for the bounty they desire. Buy the gifts that singers, dancers, and musicians offer. These are the raiment and food for the soul. It is a person's sacred duty to be certain that no one leaves the marketplace with their needs unsatisfied. The 12th chapter is about on crime and punishment. A judge asked Al-Mustafa to speak of crime and punishment. The Prophet tells the people that within themselves are housed their God self, and an uninvolved self, and a man. The God self is forever pure and lives in the sunlight. The unevolved self walks asleep in mist, seeking to awaken. The man has knowledge of crime and punishment. Al-Mustafa says that the man who commits a crime is no different from any other, no better or worse. All men walk the same path. A man stumbling and falling on the path serves as a warning to those who follow and a rebuke to those ahead who dodged, but didn't remove, the stumbling stone. The victim and the criminal share in the crime. The guiltless and unblamed have contributed to the wickedness, injustice, and injury at the heart of it. And pure justice is not attainable, for the good and evil that reside in the hearts of criminals also reside in the hearts of those who judged. The harshest punishment for crime is remorse when it falls on the heart of the guilty. The state of each person, whether erect or fallen, affects everyone. The foundation of society is set no higher than the lowest among its people. The next chapter will be about on laws. Like children building and breaking sand castles on a beach, people make laws and break them on a whim. Laws made by people are changeable and created to serve the lawmakers, to trace their shadows upon the earth. But those who seek spiritual freedom from the laws while hurting no one find happiness. Having done others no harm, they need not fear the judgment of human laws. They are free, and like the skylark, no authority can command them not to sing. Next chapter is all about on freedom. Al-Mustafa answers an orator who asked him to speak of freedom. Because people worship freedom, the Prophet says, they have become like a slave to freedom. They praise what is really a yoke and a handcuff. The desire for freedom is so great that seeking it becomes a harness to them. People wish to free themselves from care, want, and grief. But true freedom comes from accepting and rising above them. True freedom is in the soul. The 15th chapter is all about unreason and passion. The priestess asked the prophet to speak on the fundamental issue of reason and passion. Reason and judgment are often at war with passion and appetite, Al-Mustafa claims. The battlefield is the soul. To bring peace, people must learn to love all of these elements in themselves. The 16th chapter is all about on pain. Pain here comes breaking off the shell, enclosing a spiritual truth that has been hidden or denied. It is a part of life, and among its daily miracles, no less wondrous than joy. On 17th chapter, it's all about on self-knowledge. The heart's knowledge resides in the silence of someone's thoughts and dreams. It is good that people wish to have these secrets revealed in words and to touch them. From the hidden wellspring of the soul comes a treasure of infinite depths. Do not try to calculate this treasure, for self is a sea boundless and measureless. Many truths are to be discovered, and the soul of the universe walks here where it wishes and unfolds like a lotus of countless petals. Chapter 18 is all about on teaching. Responding to the teacher who asks, Al-Mustafa tells the people no teacher can give their wisdom. They can only lead someone to the threshold of their own mind, beyond which lies wisdom, half, half asleep in the dawning of knowledge. Thereafter, someone must discover and think of themselves. A teacher provides the right milieu of faith and love in which wisdom may begin to grow. One person cannot enlighten another in the knowledge of God and the understanding of the earth. A person must learn this understanding for themselves. Chapter 19 talks about friendship. A friend fulfills the need for shared love, joy, comfort, and peace. In friendship, you share ideas freely and in trust. In a friend's silence, you hear his heart's thoughts, desires, and expectations with your own heart. When you part with your friend, you see more clearly in his absence that which you love in him. On the 20th chapter is all about talking. You talk when you are not at peace with your thoughts or seek to escape the solitude of your heart. Much of your talking prevents thinking. Some people seek those who are talkative because they fear being alone and what the silence of aloneness may reveal about themselves. On the 21st chapter, it's all about time. Although you attempt to measure and regulate time, the timelessness in you knows that time is infinite and that life is timeless. Time is like love in you that feels boundless yet is encompassed and moving within the center of your being. This love does not move from finite moment to moment, but, like time, is undivided and spaceless. However, if you must measure time, let each season encircle all the other seasons. In the present moment, remember and hold the past dear and look to the future with longing. On chapter 22 is all about good and evil. Responding to the elder who raises the topic, Al-Mustafa says much is good in you. Evil is good that has been corrupted by spiritual hunger and thirst. You are good when you are one with yourself. When you are not evil, merely divided. You are good when you give off or share yourself. When you take instead, you are not evil, but needy. Nor are you evil when you fail to speak with clarity of thought and purpose of your steps after falter along the path of life. On chapter 23, it's about prayer. Ask the prophet to speak of prayer. You pray in times of stress and need. The prophet replies, but you should also pray in times of joy and abundance. In prayer, you reach out into the living ether. In prayer is comfort in pouring out your darkness and delight in pouring out your light, the dawning of your heart. When you come to prayer in sorrow, pray until you can laugh again. Through prayer enter the temple invisible and meet in sweet communion all who pray at that hour. Let that be enough for you. Chapter 24 talks about pleasure. It says, pleasure is a freedom song, a song born of fullness of heart. But it is not freedom itself. The prophet tells the hermit and the people of Orphalese. He said, seek pleasure. In seeking it, you will find her 7 sisters, the least of whom is more beautiful than pleasure. Remember pleasure with gratitude and not with regret. Do not avoid seeking or remembering pleasure because you fear neglecting or offending the Spirit. The Spirit is not a steel pool which you can trouble with a staff. Chapter 25 talks about beauty. Responding to the poet, Al Mustafa says, when a person seeks beauty, beauty herself must be the way and the guide. When someone speaks of her beauty, she'll be the source of their words. He said this because beauty is something different for everyone and can be described in different ways. Next chapter is all about on religion. An old priest asked about religion. Religion is all a person's deeds and all their reflections, the prophet says. It is a deeper, spiritual realm from which surprise and wonder spring. Faith cannot be separated from actions, nor belief from life pursuits. The hours cannot be divided into those for God and those for self. Next chapter is all about death. The series Al-Mitra asked the prophet to speak of death. Life and death are as inseparable as the river and the sea, he says. You must seek the secret of death in the heart of life. Deep within your hopes and desires are the seeds of your knowledge of the beyond. Within your heart's streams of spring is hidden the gate to eternity. And we're down to the last chapter, which is farewell. In the evening, Al Mustafa descends the steps of the temple and makes his way to the ship. The people of Arphalis follow, speaking to them one last time. He says he must go. He then assures them that although he is a wanderer in spirit, if they should begin to forget his love for them or the truth of his counsel, he will return like mist returns in rain. He has walked among them, he tells them and knows them intimately, their joy and pain, their thoughts and desires. But what is sweetest is the boundless in them, the vastness that is God, of which they all are a part. In their oneness with that vastness, they are deathless. He continues speaking to the people. They are as weak as the weakest part of themselves and as strong as the strongest part. Someone should not be judged by their smallest deeds or by their failures. Someone cannot hasten the pace of their life, for it comes like the changing tides. And though in the midst of a spiritual winter, spring may seem impossible, it is within. These words are not in praise of anyone. They are expressions of ancient knowledge, which they themselves know in thought. In coming here, Al Mustafa has found something greater than wisdom. In them, he has found a spiritual fire, which is called life in quest of life. Though they fear death, do not, he says, for there are no graves here. In coming here, he has received from them a deeper thirsting after life. As he drinks the living waters of life, he finds they too are thirsty and drink him. With loving mindfulness of days and nights, he says, the people have enriched his life and given him kindness without thought of reward. For this they are most blessed. For a good deed that calls attention to itself becomes parent to a curse. After a while, the people disperse, and Almitra stands alone on the seawall, gazing after the ship and remembering Al Mustafa's last words. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. And that's all for the part of my report. Thank you for listening, everyone. Have a good day.
Good morning, everyone. This is Robelyn, and my task is to discuss the characters of the selection, The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. So there are only two significant characters in this story. The first character is Al Mustafa, is seen by the townspeople as a prophet of God, has been living in the hills of Orphalis for 12 years. He has been serving the townspeople's spiritual needs while they have taken care of his physical needs. Al Mustafa has also been waiting for a ship that will take him back to his home. Al Mustafa, a prophet of God, who has come down from the hill to embark on the ship that will take him to the land of his birth. He has dwelled among the Orphalese for 12 years, has fathered children, and has known long days of pain and long nights alone. He has acquired the love of the people, who regard him as the chosen. But he is a seafarer and traveler, and it is time to depart. In his demeanor, his language, and his relationship to his listeners, Al-Mustafa bears a close resemblance to Jesus of Nazareth. By using a biblical setting, the book lends moral force to what the prophet says. Al-Mustafa is a mystic whose wisdom has been gleaned from much observation. In nature, he sees a revelation of all of his truth, and he takes from nature a rich array of imagery to convey his teaching, whereas Christ spoke in parables. Al-Mustafa employs paradoxical examples to illustrate his thoughts and find understanding and acceptance, yet his simple language makes his teachings accessible to all those who come to hear him speak. He delivers his wisdom on more than 2 dozen topics. The series Almitra asks him to speak of love and marriage. A mother wants the truth about children, a rich man of giving, an innkeeper of eating and drinking, a mason of houses, and a hermit of pleasure. Other subjects include the ordinary clothes, talking and buying and selling, and lofty and timeless freedom, good and evil, beauty, pleasure, friendship, time, and inevitably death. People who seek the wisdom of the prophet are only names of types or occupations. A plowman, an elder, a lawyer, a weaver, an orator, a rich man, a scholar, a poet, and an astronomer. The subjects on which the prophet speaks are but individual manifestations of the great forces that drive and define all things. As he speaks, he connects the everyday experiences of his audience to the powers of the infinite, telling his listeners that he does not bring knowledge to them. Rather, he shows them what they already know and feel but do not yet see. The prophet drives home the principle that the best life is one in harmony with nature. The individual, as part of nature, partakes of its boundless forces. As it endures, so will the souls of all who open themselves to nature and understand their affinity to it. Endless is being, he tells them, and endless is their ability to see beauty, to feel passion, and to give and receive love. Endless also is their ability to receive knowledge from nature and to understand it. He assures the people that they already possess the powers of the infinite, but because they see narrowly and see only the surface of things, they are out of harmony with the forces interfere with them, and thereby miss the great potential of their being. Each evil thought, feeling, or action is the result of their not seeing the deeper truths. With understanding comes conversion. The prophet implies for people are what they think they are, and if they think they are good, they will be. One must see the truth to receive its benefits. The prophet's final act is to give the people that understanding. Once he has conveyed this message, his mission is fulfilled, and he is ready to return to his birthplace. The implication is that the he has reached the end of his days, not only in Orphalis but in this world. In the beginning, the narrator speaks of the deeper secret that the prophet himself could not speak, but by the end it has been revealed in the truth he has spoken. So the next character is Amitra. Amitra is a series in the temple of Orphalis. She has been a supporter of Al Mustafa throughout the 12 years he has spent in her city. It is Al Mitra who encourages Al Mustafa to answer the townspeople's questions before he departs and heads back home. She begins the questioning by asking him about love. She then encourages the townspeople to ask questions of their own. Almitra then asked the final question: what is the meaning of death? When Al Mustafa and the townspeople move down to the pier, Almitra makes one final blessing and watches his departure with tears in her eyes. She is the last one to speak to Al Mustafa before he leaves. Standing on the dock alone, she thinks about the Prophet's final promise that he will return. So those are the two significant characters in this selection, which is entitled The Prophet. That would be all from my part. Thank you everyone for listening.
Hi guys, this is Zyx, and we're going to proceed for the conflict of the literature, the Prophet. The Prophet presents the farewell observations on and recommendations about life and death of Al Mustafa, the chosen and beloved Prophet, as he ends a 12-year sojourn in Orphalese. Al Mustafa, the chosen and beloved prophet around whom the story revolves, has spent 12 years of his youth in Orphalese, serving as the people's harp, flame, seeker of silence, and guardian of the night. Much of his time has been spent in the overlooking hills, watching and listening to their lives. The people have generously met Al Mustafa's physical needs, but he realizes that some have criticized his aloofness. Now, the ship he has been watching for to take him home arrives, and Al Mustafa comes down from the hills to the temple. Bittersweet about boarding, but he cannot remain. He envies the mariners who enjoys peace and freedom.
Hello everyone, I'm Reyza Mae Singcol, and today I'm going to talk about the prophet's theme and symbolism. Let's start with the prophet theme. Love and life. Love and its relationship to life is a recurrent theme in the prophet. Love itself is dealt with discreetly at the beginning of the text. Here, the Prophet Al-Mustafa defines it as a purifying force that reveals the secrets of one's heart and places a person's spirituality in the heart of God. The individual becomes a fragment of life's heart. The Prophet then links love to appreciation of life. In the associated feeling of gratitude, there is joy. In the poems that follow, love is linked to other aspects of everyday life. Al-Mustafa brings to light love's power to elevate, enrich, and transform the ordinary into the sublime. On marriage, he speaks of love and marriage, counseling that while there is togetherness, there must also be spaces between the couple for joy to exist. Love cannot be bondage or possession. On children, the Prophet describes love's essential role in child rearing. In a setting of familial love and stability, a child grows strong and prepared for life as her own person. On work, the Prophet teaches that work paired with love reflects love of life and ennobles the worker, binding him to others and to God. It is love made visible. Other pairings with love include friendship, buying and selling, reason and passion, teaching, and Al-Mustafa's life among the people of Orphalis. The God Self in all human beings. God's relationship to human beings is another recurrent theme in the Prophet. In Crime and Punishment, Al-Mustafa contends that humans are essentially good, and within each person, even the criminal is an unblemished God's Self. The Prophet compares it to the ocean, which remains forever undefiled, and to the sun, which is an enduring source of warmth and light. In the same poem, Al-Mustafa describes the role of the God Self in someone's spiritual evolution. This divine aspect of human beings dwells alongside that which is human and that which is not yet human. The Prophet teaches that the human aspect is a person standing spiritually in the twilight between the night of their lesser self and the day of their God Self. Whether upright or fallen, the person is moving on the path of transcendence toward their greater self. In On Good and Evil and on Prayer, Al-Mustafa speaks about the pursuit of the God Self. He asserts the longing for someone's giant self lies in their goodness. Growing consciousness of that giant self is found in prayer and described as a spiritual expansion of someone's self into the living ether. The God Self finds expression in other facets of life, including love, work, giving, reason and passion, and pursuit of self-knowledge. Al-Mustafa's teaching glorify this aspect of human beings and celebrate the human potential for self-transcendence and transformation. Joy and life. Joy and its relationship to life is a universal theme relevant to many of the topics Al-Mustafa explores in the Prophet. On Joy and Sorrow, he speaks about the nature of joy, disclosing that it is inseparable from sorrow and calling it sorrow en masse. The spiritual and emotional extremes of joy and sorrow are in balance, with one rising as the other falls. What gives joy is also the source of sorrow, and the deeper one experiences sorrow, the greater the heights of joy may be. In other poems, the Prophet teaches about joy's role in relationships. On Marriage, he counsels husband and wife to sing and dance together and be joyous. On Friendship, he praises the sharing of all thoughts, all desires, all expectations, as his sharing brings joy into the life of another. In the sweetness of friendship, there is laughter and the sharing of pleasures. The act of generosity is similarly praised as a wellspring of joy on giving. The Prophet states, "There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. Seeking out the needy and giving without being asked is likewise celebrated as a source of joy greater than giving." Al-Mustafa also speaks about joy's relationship to pain, work, and prayer. On Pain, he counsels that joy is linked to even the most profound emotional and spiritual pain. Such pain is necessary and stems from the breaking of the shell that encloses a person's understanding. With understanding, the wonder of life's daily miracles become clear, and pain no longer seems less wondrous than joy. Joy in work, as as in unwork, arises from work performed in love. Seeds will be sown with tenderness, and the harvest reaped with joy. Finally, the prophet teaches the virtue of praying in times of joy. He tells the people, "You pray in your distress and in your need." He then urges them to pray also in the fullness of your joy and in your days of abundance. Now, let's talk about the prophet's symbolism. The ship. In literature, the appearance of a ship often signifies that a great change is about to occur. This change can be the transition from life to death. In the prophet, the ship represents the prophet Al-Mustafa's passage to the afterlife. After 12 years in exile in the city of Arphalis, he is going home. A ship has come to take him back to the island of his birth, the place where his life began. But this is more than a physical journey. Traveling aboard the ship, Al-Mustafa will complete his life's journey. It will come full circle, ending where it began, in the place from which life sprung and to which life will return. Details of the ship deepen its symbolism as Al-Mustafa's means of transport to the afterlife. The seafarers aboard the ship personify that. Al-Mustafa acknowledges that, once among them, he will be a seafarer too. The ship is described as coming with the mast, and when it sails away from Arphalis, it vanishes into the mist. Mist denotes mystery and the unfathomable. It signifies the unknown realm into which Al-Mustafa is transported. That realm is death. The sea, as the element through which the ship travels, adds a further layer of meaning. Al-Mustafa speaks of the sea in terms of that, and the prose poem on that. He states that life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the coming of the ship, the prophet says he soon will become one with the vast sea, sleepless mother, who alone are peace and freedom to the river and the stream. He will become a boundless drop to a boundless ocean. In farewell, when it is time for the ship to sail, he tells the people of Arphalis, "The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her son against her breast." In short, the ship as a symbol stands at the center of several others to which it is linked: the seafarers, the mist, and the sea. All represent some one aspect of that, and the ship is a vehicle that will transport Al-Mustafa to that final destination. The people of Arphalis. The people of Arphalis represent all humanity, especially those who seek a deeper understanding of themselves and their world. Upon learning a ship has come to take Al-Mustafa away from them, the people of the city gathered to hear his last words of wisdom. One by one, they asked the prophet to speak on a topic there to them. The people represent all walks of life. They are innkeepers, plowmen, masons, tailors, merchants, judges, orators, teachers, and astronomers. They are the rich, the workers, members of the clergy, parents, and in all ways, ordinary people. The requests reveal their lack of understanding of the spiritual nature of their existence and chosen vocations. For example, the plumber in the poem on work says to the prophet, "Speak to us of work. The man knows what it is to work, the essence of toil and sweat. But he does not know, in the spiritual sense, the higher meaning of his labor." This is the insight Al-Mustafa provides for the plumber and for each person who asks for counsel. Collectively, they understand the earthly, physical, or practical purpose of houses, clothes, laws, and so on. But they do not understand how the spiritual transforms the physical into something more meaningful, something transcendent and touched by love and the divine. Al-Mustafa, in his teaching, seeks to open their minds and hearts to this awareness. In representing humanity and those who seek enlightenment, the people of Orpheus play a dual role. In the request for counsel, they reflect the shallow understanding and spiritual unawareness that blinds humans to living in the fullness and beauty of truth. But as seekers, they are prepared to hear Al-Mustafa's counsel, to contemplate its meaning, and to discover the truth for themselves.